Hey guys, welcome to Garden Theory.
We did a video several weeks ago talking about landscape mistakes. It was more of a sit down and chat type of video, and so today I wanted to go a little bit more in depth about some of the common landscape mistakes that I see and talk about some solutions for y'all when you're designing your own landscapes or fixing some pre-existing ones. So I hope y'all like today's video and we'll dive right into it. First one I want to talk about, and it's a very common one, but it's about tree rings and edging. Took a couple videos around where I live, and you can kind of see in a lot of these, one of the common ones I see with edging, with it not being installed correctly or it shifting over time, but having the edging not line up with the level of your turf where it's poking up out of the ground. It's not how it should be used. It should be leveled. And a lot of these spots, they were using some of this rock stuff in their beds, which I definitely don't recommend using. I recommend using mulch for your planting beds. It still can wash out, but it's a little bit easier to clean up than rocks are, especially these little rocks. But having your edging, talking about this with washout, it helps to have, so if you're having to, usually you have this with turf. So ideally you want the edging to meet or be slightly below the level of the turf. And then your landscape bed to be set about an inch inside, either slightly below level to an inch below level on the inside of that bed. That way that edging helps to contain it a bit more. You may still have stuff washing out, especially if you're on a slope, but having the inside of your landscape bed be slightly lower and the lawn being level or slightly higher than your edging helps to create a better containment for your landscape beds. And also, whenever you have trees in the lawn, you always want to have a tree ring placed around them, and this is for a couple reasons. One, it's for the protection of the tree against stream trimmers and mowers that will sometimes can even girdle a tree and kill it. So that's one reason, for the protection of the tree, especially when you're in a lawn area. And also, you want to have this tree ring extend to the drip line or the edges of the branches of the mature size of that tree. And now you may be thinking, when you're planting a small sapling, say a sapling oak tree, you don't want to have a mulch ring that's 30 feet wide. Like, that would look really weird. But when you're planning for the long run, that's something you might want to consider, especially when we're talking about lawn and stuff. You know, if you just have more of a naturalistic thing, that's okay. But when we're talking about trees in the long run, that lawn's just going to die under that tree. And you can place shrubs or flowers in the meantime to fill in that space, something that's a bit more temporary, to fill that extra space as that tree grows. And you can either plant for stuff that can handle a little bit of shade and sun, switch to more permanent shade plants once the tree gets established. But that's going to help you in the long run. That way you're not going to have to dig out turf. You're not going to have your turf die on you over time. And you can see, like, this is a very clear one that's very obvious to me when I go around places. You can see that lawn just die, you know, and it's exactly where that drip line of the tree is. That's where it dies because there's no sun. So to me, it just makes sense to plan ahead of time and to extend that tree ring. And, you know, and it's easier to do that when it's encompassed within a flower bed already. You know, if you have a giant tree ring in the middle of the lawn, you know, that's obviously not going to look the best. But that's also something you might want to consider in your design phase, is instead of putting one big giant tree in the middle of the lawn that's going to kill the grass eventually, maybe add it into a pre-existing landscape space that can go all the way around your house. That way it's in part of a whole picture instead of by itself, all alone. You know, those kind of things can help you with your landscape design. And we're actually going to go look at a few of these on paper.
So here's an old landscape design I did for my introduction to landscape design class at BYU, Idaho. And so I'm going to use this to help illustrate my point with these trees. So you can see, pretty much for the exception of this one, this is what I'm kind of talking about with all these trees. The mulch line is always going to extend, and you know, for this one it's part of a flower bed, so it extends a little past it. But each one of these trees is in part of a flower bed. None of them are going over the lawn, for the exception of this tree, which is a magnolia tree, which maybe is something I've learned. since magnolias like to go down to the ground, so they're not the best one to overlap on your lawn like this. So this is probably not the best example. This is when I was still learning more about trees. Still, for the most part, a lot of these are pretty good. The only one I would change is this magnolia. But you see here, even with something as small as a crepe myrtle, I'm keeping it within inside the flower bed. And that way the lawn has the sun that it needs to be full and lush, but the trees also have their space to be able to take up this space. And now we can put shrubs and different ground covers, as you can see right there, underneath some of these trees to be able to take some of that unique space that's underneath them. And so that's why I would recommend that you do this. You know, even with this, for example, this is a pretty good corner. We have this redbud tree, and we have these azaleas and ground cover underneath it, because they can handle that space under that tree, but this lawn would not be able to thrive underneath that redbud. So I hope this helps, and we'll go over a few other examples. So here's another example from another one of my classmates. So talking about these trees, so you can kind of see we have this half driveway here, but all the trees, again, this one doesn't have too many trees that are in the lawn, but again, all these trees, they're all in their designated spaces. Everything's based into rough zones for each different type of plant, and that's essentially how we should do this. We shouldn't try to force stuff together that isn't going to work out in the long run. That's why we need to separate our lawns from our trees. Anytime we have a tree that's in the lawn or inside a large lawn area, we need to make sure we give it the proper amount of space that we need. And again, just in the long run, depending on the size of your tree, you need a corresponding size for that tree ring. So if we had a tree right in the middle of this lawn, like a lot of places do, we need to make sure we give that mulch ring enough space. And also we want to make sure we're not mounding the mulch on top of the tree and covering that crown of the roots where they start to come from the base of the tree. We need to make sure that they can breathe so they don't rot and start to produce suckers. So again, this is all for the health of every single plant that's involved in our landscape space. So hope that makes sense. So I hope walking through some of those landscape drawings helped illustrate my point a little bit better. We need to make sure we're keeping care of the plants we put in. When you mistreat things, not putting mulch rings around your trees or expecting things to stay the same forever, you're just setting yourself up for more projects and more problems for yourself. And so a lot of good landscape design just comes with designing with mature plants in mind. A lot of times we're excited when we're planting something, and sometimes we either plant stuff too close to the foundation of our home, especially with trees, or we plant things in the middle of the lawn that we think will look good, but we really need to think out in the future. These trees are going to get big, different shrubs are going to like different lighting levels, so understanding your microclimates around your place, understanding that most lawns need adequate amount of sun, again, depends on the plant that you're working with. So make sure we always do our research when we're dealing with landscape. And when you're planning on any kind of project, big or small, we need to make sure we're understanding how everything's going to play out as things mature, and understand how we can keep these plants healthy, and that way everything we plant in our gardens can live long and be able to prosper, and to be able to provide us with a beautiful space, but also to keep these trees healthy. So I hope y'all liked today's video. Again, this video is going to be a little short, just like last week's video. I'm going to be going out of town during the 4th of July. I may do a video next week kind of talking about the trip. So let me know if you're interested in kind of more of a vlog style type video. I'll think about it and we'll see how it goes. But hope y'all all have a great 4th of July, and hope y'all all having a great summer. Thank you for watching.